Too many unclear things are happening. Now Zelensky says in Istanbul that he is ready to discuss this plan and agree on some acceptable wording. Then his representatives say, including Deputy Permanent Representative of Ukraine to the United Nations, that this out of the question. I find it difficult to comment on such speculations. We still believe that a diplomatic settlement is, of course, preferable. The Alaska meeting was preceded by the visit of U.S. President's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow with direct instructions from the U.S. President. Steve Witkoff brought to the meeting with President Putin some specific settlement parameters, which took into account our principled approaches, consisting in the need to focus on eliminating the root causes of this conflict, which we all know well. This drama began with the West's attempt to have NATO absorb Ukraine, create a military threat to Russia right at our borders, and in spite and in breach of all the promises given to the Soviet Union, and contrary to all the understandings concluded then with the Russian Federation as part of the OCE framework. The objective to dictate everybody their will has been undoubtedly preserved, and maybe it became even more apparent when its ideological shell dropped. There can be different ways of describing their approaches, but the essence is that America should be first in everything and everybody must obey it. This approach was used not only in Europe but in all other places too. It is a different matter that Europe is more dependent on the United States in terms of security, and from the point of view of its foreign policy prospects, in this case the European policy towards Ukraine. No one listens to it because Europe and the European elites placed their bets on their conviction that they could use the Nazi regime in Kiev as a proxy and cannon fodder to inflict what they call a strategic defeat on Russia. The same refers to foreign policy. All the 8 wars that Donald Trump stopped. We really appreciate his desire not to unleash wars, as his predecessors did, but stop them, froze for some time. Truces have been made. Truces have now been declared almost everywhere, in the Middle East, between Pakistan and Afghanistan, between Cambodia and Thailand, in the DRC and Rwanda. But these initiatives did not address the root causes. Problems have already emerged on the Cambodian-Thailand border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and there are quite a few clouds overshadowing the situation on the Israeli-Palestinian track, so to speak. This is why the desire to stop a bloodshed must be encouraged in every possible way. Achieving a lasting settlement, however, requires much more careful, patient initiatives without making any hasty moves. Only recently, President Emmanuel Macron came up with yet another catchy slogan by alleging that Russia invented this war and that there was no reason for starting it, no real threats, and that it was all a hoax. I may not remember his exact words, but he talked about a convulsing power, lamenting the loss of its statehood and its imperialistic colonial past. This is what President of France said. It seems that he really has a problem with his approval ratings. You have mentioned France's Chief of Defense Staff, but there is also Germany's Defense Minister, Boris Pistorius, who said that Russia is expected to attack NATO before 2030. Now he claims that this can happen as early as in 2029 or even in 2028. What are they preparing for their people? Do they want to create a sense of inevitability? What an astonishing story. Let me reiterate that there is not a single piece of evidence to prove Russia's intention to attack France. President of France Emmanuel Macron and Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz have been camping on an arrogant position, and this is even more true for the Belgians, the Dutch, and Mark Rutte. But all this demonstrates their confusion. They do not know what to do. They probably risk losing power if they radically change their rhetoric by starting to take their cues from reasonable Europeans, such as Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, and Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, who say that they needed to talk with Russia and stop placing their bets on war. Every year when I came to New York to attend the General Assembly sessions, in 2022, 2023, 2024, and in 2025, when speaking before the UN Security Council, I personally addressed UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and asked him directly whether we could receive a list of the individuals whose bodies were shown in the BBC report as alleged victims of atrocities committed by Russian forces. Frankly, I am already embarrassed for him. He is, after all, a respected public figure. He replied that the UN follows certain rules, and that this matter falls under the competence of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. When we contacted that office, we received a formal response stating that their procedures do not allow the disclosure of confidential information if doing so could cause mental distress or other harm to surviving relatives. I'm not even going to comment on this. This is a disgrace for the organization which publishes any facts when it finds it necessary. Concealing the names of those whose bodies have already been used for a major provocation is already a confession. We do not harbor any illusions regarding people holding senior roles in the West. Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, and Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, are an exception. Andrej Babis has now taken office as Prime Minister of the Czech Republic. These are pragmatic-minded people. It is not that they are pro-Russian. They are pro-Hungarian, pro-Slovakian, and pro-Czech, and focus on their people. They do not want to call on their people to sacrifice their children for the sake of supporting the Nazi regime. My former colleague, Alexander Stubb, who used to serve as Foreign Minister of Finland, now pretends to know everything and camps on outright Russia-hating positions after becoming president, which included, of course, playing golf with Donald Trump. Finland maintained its neutrality for many decades, but this did not prevent the sprouts stemming from the Nazi past of the Finnish states from resurfacing. These moments of truth do come, but when they are ready to talk, we will think about what we will talk about. If they hope that we will come running once they express their readiness to sit down with Russia at the negotiating table, this will not happen. We want to understand what they are ready to bring to the negotiating table. After that, we will decide. It was recently revealed that another 100 million was spent on bribes to corrupt officials. Has anyone in the Brussels bureaucracy or in the countries that are pumping Ukraine full of money explained to their taxpayers that they must endure and suffer? Perhaps there are some beneficiaries involved as well. I do not rule anything out. President of France, Emmanuel Macron has already said somewhere that he intends to participate in BRICS. However, no one has extended an invitation to him. I do not believe there is a consensus within BRICS, nor even a majority, that would welcome France given its current positions in the global economy, politics, and finance. In my view, France's natural place remains within NATO and the European Union, which today are hardly distinguishable from one another, and obviously within the G7, which is losing relevance.
бюрократии из тех стран, которые Украину